Well, I thought shooting a 2-day match was tough until I RO'd one. Hi everyone, it's a 4-gun guy. And I RO'd the Best in Texas PRS match this past weekend at my home range in just outside of Navasota, Texas. And I've got to tell you, it's the first time I've formally RO'd a match, and it was a doozy. So what I wanted to go over today was just some of my observations from the shooters to the equipment to the conditions, the course of fire, just kind of cover a lot of different things. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Let's talk about the cost of a 2-day match. So I've done a couple of videos here lately about the cost of this sport. And again, I will preface this by saying, don't be running this video if your spouse is in the room, because you don't want them to know what this stuff costs. But a 2-day match, number one, the entry fee is $325 for the 2-day match. Now, if you're local, you know, you've got things like travel, gas, what else? Yeah, you know, the wear and tear on your car, tolls, all that stuff. If you're from out of town, you've got either driving here from, say, Oklahoma or New Mexico or wherever you might drive from, that's maybe a 1 or 2-day trip, or you're flying, which is a whole nother expense. And then you're toting your rifle, your equipment, your ammo, all that stuff, and that can cost some money. From an ammo perspective for a 2-day match, I did some rough calculations, and in fact, I just did a video on ammunition, on reloading versus off the shelf. And in a 2-day match, you're probably going to want 300 rounds of ammo. The match itself is probably going to run you through about 200 rounds, and then you want another 100 rounds for either practicing on Friday and then validating your dope Saturday morning for the beginning of the match. But so either way you look at it, the cost of this match, I think I added it up, and the cost of the match for just local guys was probably around $750. For people who are traveling out of town, you're probably looking closer more to like $2,500 or something like that when you throw in a rental car and all that stuff. So those were the costs. Let's talk about the conditions and just the overall briefing of the match. From a conditions standpoint, it was relatively mild temperature-wise. I think we were in the 70s most of the time. No rain, thank goodness, but it was windy. I mean, it was really windy. Generally, the wind that I heard people using for their dope was anywhere from 14 to 18 miles an hour, and I know we had gusts up into the mid-20s, so it was a very challenging weather-wise from a wind standpoint. The course of fire I thought was pretty darn good. I thought it was fair when I looked over the stage brief. This is the stage brief here, so it's got all of the stages in it. It was 18 stages, and I RO'd along with two other guys. I RO'd stage 6. Which was probably, I heard one of the stages was really hard, really complex. I'd say this was probably the second most complex stage of the match. And it was complex because, I wish I had a picture of it. I should have taken pictures of the whole thing, but I didn't. You had 4 props you had to shoot off of. So we had a helicopter, a car, a concrete culvert, and then an upside down John boat that was slanted on one of the culverts. The culverts generally are in a U shape, and they had this John boat upside down on the center culvert there. So you had to shoot off of all 4 of those props. That's not that big of a deal, but the firing sequence was what was interesting. Some things you have to realize here is the turkeys were at the same distance, so no big deal there. And then the pig was at a different distance, and the goat was at a different distance. The 3 targets were pretty good sized targets. The turkeys were big. But here's the challenge. You can see that as you're moving along this thing, you've got to remember what you're shooting at and what sequence you're shooting at, especially at the very end here, the last position, or the 3rd position and the last position, because the turkey order is reversed from when you first shot it. You start with left turkey, right turkey, but you end with right turkey on the 3rd, then you go to the left turkey on the 4th position, and then you skip the right turkey and shoot the pig and the goat. Now I'm saying all this because it's going to kind of lead me into my next section here with this, which is how people shot this stage, and those who shot it well and those who didn't shoot it well. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the stage, who shot it well, who didn't shoot it well. It was a mixed bag. Out of 200 shooters, 4 people cleaned the stage all weekend. Just 4 people got all 12 impacts in under the 2-minute time frame. I would say a good 70% of the people timed out. And then some people who did shoot the whole thing didn't make all the impacts. I believe the average on that stage was around a 5 or a 6 out of 12 shots. So possible 12, I think the average was 5 or 6. So we had 4 cleans, we had a few 11s, a few more 10s, and then some 9s. I didn't see many like 8s or 7s, so it really kind of dropped off down to 6s, 5s, and then down to 0s. The people who listened to the Course of Fire did well. So I'm going to tell you that when you go to these matches, don't talk to your buddies, don't be reloading. When the RO says stage brief, please go and listen to the stage brief and ask questions. When you're at the stage brief and they're going over the stage brief, what you do not want to do is argue with them about the stage brief. It's set up for a reason. So here's what we would get. The one gentleman that I worked with, Buck, I know him, I've known him for a little while. He would go through the stage brief, and when he would get to this last one, it would say, on the 3rd position, it's goat, goat, right turkey. Then the 4th position, left turkey, pig, goat. Invariably, in half of the squads, someone would say, well, why is it like that? Well, we start with left turkey, right turkey. Why are you da-da-da-da? I have no idea. I didn't write this. Someone else wrote it. This is the stage brief. This is what it's telling you to do. That's like saying, I'm in my car and I get to a school zone that says 30 miles an hour. Why do I have to go 30 miles an hour? I shouldn't have to go 30. I was just going 60. You got to go 30. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So don't argue with the RO about the stage brief. It is just what it is. But the people who listened really did better. If they were good enough to do better, they did better. Let's talk about why the good shooters did so well on this stage next. Well, there were some shooters, and I knew a lot of the shooters that filtered through because I shoot with a lot of those guys. There were some shooters that I thought, oh, he's going to clean this thing. Got a 2. There were some shooters that I knew were going to do well because they are the top of the bunch. They're in the top 20 every time, or the top 10, or even the top 5. It was really nice to see. The guys who did it well, I have my cheat sheet here, they had a plan and they stuck to it, right? They didn't question. Am I doing bipod? Am I going to do just a man in his bag? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? I watched them and they knew exactly what they were going to do. They had no question. There was no question. It wasn't a bipod was on there and then they took it off and they put it back on. No question. They were smooth as silk in all of their transitions. Very smooth. Not jittery, not jerky, very smooth. Fast first shot. And I was giving people their first shot when they finished. Two of the gentlemen that cleaned it, one of them cleaned it, and his first time to first shot, that means that he's standing there with his rifle, and when that buzzer goes off and I say shoot, and he gets in position, he has to acquire that first turkey and pull the trigger. That took him 6.7 seconds. One of the other really good shooters that I know very well, he was 9.6, I think, seconds. So very fast on that first shot. And that's something I'm working on, is acquiring the target and breaking that first shot. So they were very good. Very good wind adjustment. Now the guys who cleaned it, they obviously hit every target. But what I noticed on guys who did very well on the stage was that most of them missed the first target. So they missed that first turkey. Now think about this. Your first two targets are turkeys at the exact same distance. And here's what I noticed. They got on their rifle, they took the shot, and they held it. And when the spotter didn't say anything, which meant you missed, then they went to the second target. So they obviously learned from that first miss, and from then on out, they were hitting everything or nearly everything. I think the ones that did missed because they were really light on time and they just wanted to break the shot on that 12th shot and get it over with. So a couple other things were good shooters knew how to get back into position when they made mistakes. Some of the shooters, remember, it was 4 positions, 3 shots each position. Many shooters got hung up for some reason on that third position. They would only shoot 2 shots and then move to the last position. I had to let them take their first shot there before I said, wrong position, because they're out of position. Or they took 4 shots on that third position and then moved to the 4th position. Well, now you technically only have 2 shots left on that 4th position, and you're shooting the pig and the goat. You already shot at something on this 3rd position, which should have been the turkey. You shot that at this position. I know I'm not explaining it well, but you get the idea. You have 3 shots at each position. If you don't take all 3 or take 4, your next position, you've got to think about what just happened, and look at your card and say, okay, I did this, I should be here now, and then take that shot. Good shooters were able to do that. So when I would say out of position, I either saw gears moving in their head, looking at their card and then breaking the shot on the right target, or I saw sparks flying out of their head because they were short-circuiting. They didn't realize what I was saying. And this goes back to the whole, I just did a video on new shooters. So if you're a new shooter, don't shoot a 2-day match. I had 3 shooters. This was the very first match they've ever shot. And I was like, good for you, but I don't know why. And they did poorly, but hopefully they had a good time. Let's talk about what happens when us ROs see something or don't see something that you see. There were about 3 people who argued with us during this match. All three of them were very good shooters. I knew all three of them. And this goes hand in hand with something I said earlier. People who listened to the course of fire and the stage brief did well. People who didn't listen to the course of fire and the stage brief got on the stage, and when I said wrong position, they wanted to argue. First thing, don't argue when you're on the clock. You're on the clock. The time's ticking, and the ROs don't care. That timer's going down. And if you want to sit there and argue or turn around and go, that was an impact, that's not the way to do it. If you want to say while you're moving to your next target, oh man, guys, that looked like an impact to me, that's fine, because now you've noted to them that let's talk about this afterwards. But do not argue while you're on the clock. It just doesn't do anybody any good. But the ones who listened did well. There was a gentleman, man, this was, I told him afterwards too. He shot the stage, and then afterwards I went up to him and I said, whatever name, I said, I've got you for a 7. And a 7 was a good score, above average. 7 was a good score. But he's a shooter who probably should have cleaned it. So you got to realize a 7 to him, you just drop 5 shots on a 12-shot stage, your match is over, right? It's over, and we're going to talk about why that is. But he did a really classy thing. I said, I got you for a 7. And he goes, a 7? Huh. He said, I thought I got an 8. He said, let's talk about that. I said, okay. Yeah. I said, what shot do you think you got, did you think you hit? And he, we went down it, because the way I score is I score at the shot. So when you're done, I generally walk up to you and go, hey, Joe, you got a 10 on there. You missed shot 2 and you missed shot 8. And that way, you know that I'm paying attention to the shots. Other ROs will just go impact, impact, impact. And at the end, they'll just do 10 down the 12-shot scoring system. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good. So anyway, I said, what shot do you think you missed or made? He said, I think it was shot 7. So I turned around to the spotters and I said, gentleman thinks that he impacted shot 7. What do you think? And they said, we were wondering about that, because it could have been, but we weren't sure, so he didn't say anything. And luckily, he had a buddy of his who was spotting as well. And he said, yeah, he goes, I think it was an impact. And so they concurred with him. I gave him the point. The whole point here is, though, guys, be respectful and do it in a tactful way, just like he did. He did it in a really, really great way. Let's talk about a couple things that I noticed that were kind of surprising to me. I want to talk about some equipment observations. Number one, I was very shocked that a lot of shooters had a send it level on their scope. I saw 2 shooters use them. The ones who didn't use them either had them on, and as they're shooting, I'm looking right at it because I'm standing right next to them, and it's either blue or red, which means you're canted. So at 760 yards, that's probably not good, and could have been one of the reasons you're missing. And then some of them just had them off. So my whole point is, if you're not going to use it, don't spend the money on it. I like on this scope, which does not belong on this rifle. It belongs on a different rifle. On my AR 10, I don't have a send it level. I just have a regular bubble level up here. I do have a send it level on my other 2 scopes, or this scope in the back. But I noticed a lot of guys just didn't use their equipment. A man and his bag, that is referring to, You don't use a bipod, you don't use a tripod for rear support. You're just using something like a tater tot and your rifle, and that was it. And this seemed to work really well on that stage. You were shooting out of a helicopter with slanted seats. You were shooting off a car which has a wonky hood on it and a messed up top and a messed up trunk. Then you're shooting off of a culvert, which did well for a bipod. And then you were shooting off the boat, which was, as I said, upside down, so it angled up front. And I saw some guys' rifles fall off the front of it when they used a bipod. So a, quote, man in his bag did really well on this stage, and I was kind of surprised to see that. Jerks seemed to finish last, and good attitudes seemed to do well, or at least have a good time. But another thing, if you're going to RO one of these matches, at the beginning of the stage brief, I told everyone, number one, this is a 2-day match, which means no coaching, and it also means no reshoots unless it's something outside your control. So remember, if you do one of these 2-day matches and you forget your magazine, you forget to dial your dope in your scope, you forget to adjust your parallax, your scope caps are still down or on, doesn't matter. When that buzzer goes off, if you don't have any ammo, you're going to set your rifle down and go load a mag and then come back and shoot. And that's going to take you about a minute. And so now you have 1 minute to shoot the stage. So you've got to be prepared because in these 2-day matches, they really do mean a lot. And if you're part of what's called the AG Cup in PRS, then that means there's money on the line. And you want to take this pretty serious. So with all that said, I had a great time. It's a lot of work. There's no stopping for the RO like there is when you're shooting one of these things, right? You shoot your stage, then you reload your mags, and you might help with brass or scoring or something like that. But then you can go sit down, relax, have a drink, get something to eat. ROing, it was just constant shooter after shooter, and then the next squad is waiting, so you've got to run them through as fast as you can. It was interesting. And I think every shooter should have to RO a match so you understand what goes into it and what those folks are up against, because they really do a lot. Look, thanks for watching. Oh, and by the way, I did win a $100 cheesecake, which was phenomenal. But so that was a bonus for RO in the match. But it was a good experience. Well, hey, thanks for watching this one. I really do appreciate it. Just remember, let's be respectful when we're out there. Let's have a good time. Even if we're not having a good day, it doesn't mean someone else shouldn't have a good day, right? So thanks for watching, guys. All the likes, subs, comments. I've got a lot of other stuff coming up. And until next time, shoot straight.